Experts say it's just a matter of time before legalization of marijuana becomes commonplace. But even supporters of legalizing pot have reason to be wary of the latest effort in Nevada. Could you land in prison for smoking pot, even if it becomes legal? We'll ask our guests next on Face to Face.
Tough questions, direct answers. This is Face to Face with Jon Ralston.
Welcome to Face, the only statewide news interview program in Nevada. We'll bring you newsmakers and commentary you won't find anywhere else. If at first you don't succeed, try again. That's the mantra of the people out to legalize marijuana. They've launched yet another statewide initiative aimed at legalizing weed. But even proponents may have cause for alarm. Remember Jessica Williams? She's a young woman sentenced to at least 18 years in prison for running down 6 teens who were picking up trash on a remote stretch of I-15. Williams admitted to smoking marijuana earlier, and though the jury found her not guilty of driving under the influence, she was convicted under a law that prohibits traces of marijuana in the blood. The problem? Marijuana can stay in the blood for a month. So even someone who smokes it legally, should the petition pass, could be involved in an accident days later and still be sent to prison, just like Jessica Williams. In a little while, we'll hear from a retired Reno Medical School professor who says the war on drugs is a lost cause. But first, the director of the Marijuana Policy Project, Dave Schwartz. And also with us, attorney Craig Mueller. He defends drivers accused of driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Mr. Schwartz, I mentioned before, this has been tried before. Why is the time right now, except just to implore you again in this state?
Well, as we see across the nation, there are more and more conversations about this. Just the other day, California's legislature actually got a bill out of public safety that is talking about taxing and regulating. Washington State is talking about taxing and regulating. This
is Nevada, though, sir. Right. Why in Nevada? Why isn't it the right time in Nevada?
Because we've seen that people are very interested in making this change. In 2006, we had 44% of the vote, and it was very encouraging to us. We hear the conversations, we talk to people on a daily basis, and we're very encouraged about this, and we see this as an opportunity of a time of change, that people see that the war on drugs has failed, especially the war on marijuana has failed. And it's time to take it out of the hands of the illegal dealers, put it into a regulated market, and do those things and bring in economic revenue into the state.
What do you think? You've been doing this for a long time, sir. You deal with this issue in different ways in the court milieu, so to speak, but you're also very politically savvy and aware. I know that about you. Do you think that this state is ready for this?
Politically and legally, yes. I've read his petition and reviewed it. In the real world, I don't believe it's going to be a problem. You did point out the Jessica Williams case, and the problems that I see are not necessarily their petition, it's the current state of Nevada law, which is so inartfully drafted, it's going to need fixing at the legislature if this petition does pass.
That's probably true. We're going to get to that issue in a moment. Let me just show people what your petition says, at least partly, about addressing the economic benefits of legalizing pot. A regulated system of state-licensed marijuana suppliers and retail stores would shift profits from the sale of marijuana from the criminal market to tax-paying businesses in Nevada, would likely create thousands of new jobs in the state. Thousands of new jobs.
Of course. I mean, we're talking about having 50 regulated growers, suppliers, and then roughly 120 stores within the state. And so, of course, that is going to create jobs.
When you talk to your clients sometimes, do they talk about the issue of legalization? Do you talk to people about the issue of legalization? They say, what am I doing in this court? Why am I paying you money, Mr. Mueller? This should be legal.
I'd love to tell you we have great policy discussions in the office, but it always starts with, can you keep me out of jail?
Yeah, right.
And the answer is, if you can keep me out of jail, then and once I calm them down, then maybe if they think about it, they'll say, these laws really aren't very well thought out, and they don't say it quite so eloquently. But the answer is no, we don't really sit down and debate the finer points of it.
Well, that's what we're here for today. And I guess one of the comparisons that's always made is the difference between booze and marijuana. What's more dangerous? What's causing more problems out there? A doctor wrote an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal. He says he's more concerned about his substance abuse patients using alcohol than marijuana. Here's what he wrote. Alcohol frequently induces violent or dangerous behavior and often irreversible physiological dependence. Marijuana does neither. Chronic use of cannabis raises the risk of lung cancer, weight gain and lingering cognitive changes, but chronic use of alcohol can cause pancreatitis, cirrhosis, and permanent dementia in healthy but reckless teens and young adults. It is frighteningly easy to consume a lethal dose of alcohol, but it's almost impossible to do so with marijuana. Further, compared with cannabis, alcohol can cause severe impairment of judgment, which results in greater concurrent use of hard drugs. He's right in that comparison, isn't he?
In the real world, day to day, yes, sir, he is.
Tell me what you see. Give us an example. You don't have to, obviously you're not going to name names, but give us some example where you could show that.
We went through, and after you invited me on, I surveyed an administrative law judge, the DMV, a couple of very senior police officers who I crossed swords with on a regular basis, and we racked our brains collectively, and then they were very forthcoming. And we could only recall 1 or 2 cases where an accident was unambiguously caused by marijuana use. And candidly, the guy was smoking at the time. So whether he was, that's just not paying attention. And you can't fix stupid. So, yeah. So whether the marijuana caused it or not, even that was debatable. The vast majority of the DUI marijuana cases I see where they even get the temerity up to charge it is always concurrent with alcohol. And candidly, marijuana represents a very small percentage of the docket compared to prescription drug abuse, which is actually much more prevalent.
It's a much bigger problem. Why is law enforcement then always get so upset? They present the gateway argument, but do you think there's another reason?
Well, if you take a look at where some of the funding comes for law enforcement, it comes from prohibition and eradication of marijuana, and that's oftentimes where it comes from. There's also been this idea that you have to be tough on crime, and marijuana is one of those issues that you have to be tough on, and that's where I think most of the resistance comes from.
I can't imagine that most people in law enforcement get a lot of votes by saying, I'm going to be tough on marijuana, though.
No, but it's as an overall that it's tough on crime, and we still have this association that marijuana is what causes major crime, and I think that's the association that is often put in, especially in the political world.
Well, let me go real quickly, and you mentioned in California, for the first time in this country, a legislative body approved recreational use of marijuana this week. Let me show people. Law enforcement remains largely opposed, as I said, to the legalization efforts. The regional director of the National Narcotics Officers Association's coalition predicted disaster if California's bill were to pass. Use by juveniles will increase, he warned. Organized crime will flourish. The cartels will thrive. I think we just saw all this in 2012. Didn't it? The world ended or something like that. I mean, that is essentially the apocalypse is nigh, right? That's always what they say.
That is always the argument, and as time goes along and there are more and more studies to show that this is not going to end the world. As a matter of fact, this is probably going to help law enforcement free up time, free up resources, and that's a positive.
Okay. All right. We're going to come back and talk more about this with Dave Schwartz from the Policy Project. And Craig Mueller, I think, has done more research than I did for this program. That's kind of scary. We're going to talk about the flaw in that petition. The Jessica Williams case is very instructive when Face to Face returns.